Let's start with the obvious. It's a win. It's another road win that they needed to have under their belts. I don't know about you guys. I know this podcast usually lasts about 45, 50 minutes or to an hour, but I can assure you the comments that we're going to receive and a lot of the concern is the defense. The defense is really concerning, but I know Aaron Henry is probably going to say that they only gave up 27 points, which is right. At the end of the day, you want to keep teams out of the end zone, but Purdue had 453 yards of total offense, and I'm surprised. Disrespect to Purdue, I don't think they're that good. And again, I know we'll dive into that, but to win and congratulations to Luke Altmaier breaking the record for throwing for 390 yards. It was another good showing. I think all those things are all positives. You take the win, but I think Illinois fans now they want more. I think they've got a taste of it. I think they want the complete team, and right now I don't know if they are, fellas.
I will say USC also won by 16 at Purdue. It's not shameful to win by 16 at Purdue. Mike pointed out a road win in the Big Ten by 16 is not anything to just toss away as if we're in Ohio State or something like that. It's a good time to be an Illini fan and that we can control a game like that and still win. One of the frustration for me is I've been harping on this, but number one, Caden Fagan cannot pick up blitzes. Can't. We saw Adrian Lawfrey come back last week and be the pass blocker on passing downs. Did a fine enough job. We see Caden Fagan come in because Lawfrey apparently is hurt. He was not declared to be hurt, but apparently they're holding him out. And it was a disaster again. The other thing is we got to be ready for corner blitzes. That was the only sack that we gave up last week. I'm sure everybody remembers the one where basically Luke Altmaier got to spend one of his 9 lives last week as he got absolutely lit up by a corner blitz. And then I was saying out loud when I saw Illinois motion its receivers to a trips left formation, leaving a corner by himself out in the corner. I was like, gosh, I sure hope Purdue didn't realize that we don't have any way to pick up a corner blitz in that situation. And that's what happened. And then it happened again, giving up 2 corner blitzes, sacks in situations like that when we gave up a sack in the same situation last week is troubling. In that situation, the simple thing to do is just to get the ball out of your hand. That's something we really just did not do yet. So that was my frustration, is just seeing the same thing again and again. But again, like Mike said, it's a good time to be an Illini fan when we can still get a win. We're a top 25 team. Everything indicates that we're at least a top 25 team. And next week we get an opportunity to make a big statement win. So hopefully we can clean things up and have an epic game next week.
Yeah, because I will tell you one thing. There's a couple of guys on Ohio State that I do not want to see get a straight-up shot on Luke Altmaier because they won't leave anything left. But again, let's talk a little bit when you take a look at this, what Illinois has going in terms of statistically speaking. Illinois ended up with another 500-yard game with 500 yards of offense today, which is pretty impressive. Purdue was at 450. You don't like to give up that many yards, and that's some of the angst from Illini land. 390 yards passing for Luke Altmaier in an incredible game, 19 for 22 with 1 touchdown. Continues his streak of no interceptions, 302 yards for Purdue, 117 yards for the Illini, 151 for Purdue. And I think people would have liked to have seen the Illini run the ball a little more in the second half, a little more successfully. Illinois kept the penalties down, 4 for 31, 22 first downs to Purdue's 25. Illinois was 2 for 11 on third and 0 for 1 on fourth. So there were opportunities there to get better results. Meanwhile, Purdue was 5 for 13 on third down and 2 for 3 on fourth down. Purdue had the advantage of plays 75 to 63, and Illinois still maintained 20 yards per completion. And you saw Illinois was 6 for 7 in the red zone. Purdue was 2 for 2. So there's a little bit of your bend, don't break. And you had, of course, 2 turnovers. And I thought both of them for Purdue were really critical. And I think as you look at what they did, Illinois ended up winning the game, but there were a lot of opportunities, again, that fans would look at and would be saying, okay, we played good. We got the victory, but there's opportunities for improvement. A few minutes here, Ked, give you guys a chance. Talk a little bit about what you saw out of Luke Altmaier, because despite some of the, I don't know how to say it, erratic offensive line blocking, and despite the inability to move the ball, you had another really almost semi-historic game for him with 19 for 22. He's putting up numbers that are just incredible.
He completed 83% of his passes. I like the offense that they run. If you're a quarterback, and I'm not just saying this because we cover the University of Illinois, you'd be crazy to not want to play for a coach like Barry Lunney Jr. If you look at Luke's passes, they're not in harm's way. He puts the ball where only the receiver can get, and they run good routes, and they're not illegal screens, but they screen across where guys are wide open. It's a lot easier. It's comfortable. It's a fun offense to throw in. If you really think about it, and this is a Brett Bielema team, and we're just looking at today's game, they passed for 390 yards and rushed for 117. 3 years ago, we would have never said that. There would have been 60-40 the other way. But Luke is just special. He really is. And I don't hear a lot of NFL guys talk about him. I don't know what the reason could be, but he's putting up some great numbers. And if you give him time to throw, he will carve you apart. And the biggest growth I've seen, guys, is that even if he's throwing over the defender, he's putting in the ball in the spot where only the offensive player can get. I remember Ron Turner, when he was coaching Illinois, that was one of his biggest pet peeves with his quarterbacks. Throw the ball where only they can get it, and if you can't get it, he taught his receivers to knock the ball down so the defender can't. So I'm impressed with Luke. I mean, every week he surprises us, 390 yards. I know I expect to see a really good performance against Ohio State. If the offensive line blocks, I don't care who it is, he will carve you apart if you give him time to block. He blocks him.
So experience is the secret sauce in college football. I've probably said that 1,000 times by now. And you can really tell with Luke Altmaier. He's been in these situations again and again. Crowd noise, some guy yelling at him, a gimpy ankle, doesn't matter. He knows exactly what he's going to do. The announcers talked about how they go through situations with him through the week, and he really seems prepared for all those situations. What I really love to see is that he's not just sitting back there in a rocking chair, focusing on his receivers and understanding like, okay, I'm just going to throw the ball here. In another second, I'm going to look away, and then I'm going to see the guy open in the flat, etc. A couple of those situations, he was put in a situation where he had to think on his feet just a little bit, roll out a little bit, still completed those passes. It's just, and you could tell his heart rate wasn't up. He knows exactly what to do. Okay, I'm going to roll out a little bit. That's going to buy me a second. I think I've got a guy over here. And look, there he is. That's what really impresses me about Luke Altmaier. It's not just a lot of fifth-year quarterbacks are going to look comfortable in a situation like he is, but he has gone to the next level where he can think on his feet and he can improvise just a little bit too. It's great to see. I really don't want to see him take hits, especially in a game like this. You saw him, Ked mentioned this at halftime, he'd taken a little bit too many hits, and then he had to be rolled out on this one, and somebody fell on his ankle, and he was limping back to the huddle. We cannot see that. You're not going to be Ethan Hampton behind him is also an incredibly experienced backup, but it's just not the same as having Luke Altmaier on the field. So hopefully we can keep him healthy.
Yes, and thanks for tuning in here to the Eye on the Illini Live Illini Central postgame, brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. Folks, if you're an Illini guys and Illini fan in Missouri, get ready because your wait is almost over. The DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, is coming soon to the Show Me State, and you can sign up today. New Missouri customers can get $300 in bonus bets when we launch on December 1st. Download now and place a $5 bet when we go live. DraftKings Sportsbook brings everything you need to elevate your game day. Live in-game betting, lightning fast payouts, and endless ways to get in on the action, all right from your phone. And when we officially go live in Missouri, you'll be betting with the Sportsbook app trusted by millions. Safe, secure, and has fast money withdrawals. Download DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code STL Sports to grab $300 in bonus bets with just a $5 bet when we go live on December 1st. That's the code STLSPORTS in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, 21 plus, physically present in Missouri. Eligibility restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Excludes customers who redeem pre-launch sign-up offer. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos. So get out there and get going with DraftKings. Now, as we look at this game, the other question that, and I think somebody brought up here, when Aiden Lawfrey comes back, just play him and Valentine. And I know Fagan has been a little bit frustrating. We talked about this on the halftime show. I'll be honest with you, I would like to see Fagan used just a little bit differently. I would like to see him given the room to get out in space. He certainly has shown that he has speed. He just doesn't seem to have the ability to cut quickly. And I think Lunny could probably do a better job of game planning for him, or just put in the I formation, which gives him a few steps before he gets the ball. Kat, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but I hate to just shelve Fagan when you get somebody else back.
Too good of a player. I was going to say, you stole my thunder, get him closer to the line so he doesn't have to react and the line can get to him first. I think when Luke's back there in the generic shotgun position, get the quarterback up to the line and hand the ball off to him, because they're able to react way too soon. And going downhill, he's great. He really is. And he's not a kid I want to give up on. But I will say this, though. As good as we thought, Khalil Valentine was today, now he had 95 yards, but he also had 22 carries to go with that. I just think if you're going to utilize him, you can't put him in a position where it's too predictable. Like that fourth down play, that was very predictable. It was like, who's tougher? And Illinois hasn't had success with that, running around the middle the whole game. I wouldn't have done it. I think the offensive line is good. We've seen it. Today, they just had a bad day, in my personal opinion. But you can't give up on a guy like Fagan because he's too good of a player. But I would definitely, I think as a coach, me being as a coach, if I had a player that talented, it's my responsibility to find a way to utilize that talent. Regardless of how you do it, whether it's getting the ball out to him in the flat, getting the ball out to him sooner, whatever that is, you can't waste that kind of talent.
That's true. Caden Fagan is very talented, and I don't blame the kid at all. I realize I've harped on his lack of pass blocking ability, but that's a coaching issue. And so is this. You've got to find plays, more than one play that he can be effective in. He needs some time to build up his speed. It's as simple as that. He's not your classic 250-pound bruiser that you'd see from the 1970s or even 80s. He's a guy who needs to build up his speed. He's better on outside plays than inside plays, always has been. And you've got to be able to, number one, figure out plays where he can be effective, and number two, figure out the play that he's going to be effective with after they take away the play that he's primarily effective with. It's totally a play calling issue. I feel like Illinois will be able to get that done. Barry Lunny specializes in coming up with plays like that. It's a little bit easier for him to do when he has three backs available to him as well. So hopefully Adrian Lawfrey coming back makes a difference. And I don't think we should just shelve Caden Fagan when that happens. It'll be good to have three backs left. And of course, I'm going to beat this drum again. We need to have a third back ready. Cedric Weiss can do some things. Find a couple plays where he can be effective too. Keeps the defense off balance. Doesn't necessarily have to be him, but we've got to have a third back ready. They've always had three backs under Barry Lunny ready to play at all times. And for some reason, with Adrian Lawfrey out, they've decided to go with two, and it makes us a little bit too predictable. And as good as Barry Lunny is, he's got to have a few more, let's say, clubs in the bag ready to go in certain situations. So that's just my take on it.
And I think the other thing, just to wrap this one up, is I do think that somebody mentioned it a few weeks ago. If you had Paul Christ as the offensive coordinator, Fagan might be sitting on, some 100-yard games because they're going to run out of the eye. And that probably fits him a little bit better because by the time he gets the ball, he's got a head of steam up, doesn't have to quite pick where he's going to go or accelerate. I think the interesting 5-1 into going into Ohio State, I think that people were hoping for 6-0, but obviously Indiana was a little bit of a speed bump that caused a little problem there. But I do think after losing 63-10, I think a lot of us were uncertain that Illinois would be able to reach 5-1 for the Ohio State game. And this Ohio State team is talented, don't get me wrong, but I think this is a team that's beatable. I don't think this is a Ohio State team that comes in here that Illinois doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell. But they are going to have to play good, and they are going to probably have to play much better in the first quarter. I don't see you being able to take a quarter off against Ohio State and surviving. Ked, what are your thoughts on this upcoming game that will dominate the discussion most of the week?
Mike, it's like you're in my brain. I agree. I'm sorry. I don't think Ohio State is good. They're the number one team in the country, and they're talented. But I think Illinois offense is good enough to they can score on anybody. I really do believe that for a number of reasons. Everybody took today as a trap game. To me, I'm concerned about the games afterwards, the Maryland game, the Washington game. That's a concern for me because I think they're better. And I think there's a defensive coordinator there that's very familiar with Illinois that's down there. So we saw how that worked out last year when Illinois played Purdue. So my concern is that part of it. Illinois, if you think about it, next week is big. It will be sold out and it will be rocking. People probably start tailgating at 2 o'clock in the morning. There's a lot on the table here. Illinois could right the ship from that embarrassing loss to Indiana if they can win. They're one game away from becoming bowl eligible, which is another feather in Illinois' hat. What's really weird, and I'll end with this, I'm gonna criticize myself. They're 5-1, and I'm sitting here nitpicking things that are wrong. And just before Brett Bielema got there, they'd probably be 1-5 with the schedule. So I need to be realistic and take a step back. Nothing's perfect. Nothing is. As analysis, when we make these comments, you want to see things show up a little bit. And at the end of the day, I criticize the defense, but they only gave up 27 points. And we can get mad, yes, with missed tackles and miscues, but that happens every game. Brett Bielema has put the taste in the Illinois fans' mouth that winning and dominating is all that matters. And that's a good thing. I guess we can look at it and complain, but at the end of the day, that's what matters. And they got to win, and we've all said to be competitive. This is the first time since, 2021 that they won back-to-back against Purdue. Purdue owns Illinois football.
Yeah, so I was going to say there's an underrated aspect to running a college football program, and that's called managing the schedule. And average fans don't really think about it. Illinois, just like Indiana, had a whole different set of plays ready for our game against them. They had everybody rested. They had everybody ready to go. And so they absolutely stomped us. It wasn't 53 points worth of stomping as far as managing the schedule, because Illinois really did fall apart in that game. But it's a really underrated aspect of running a program. I firmly believe that Illinois was managing the schedule and that they didn't really they held guys out today because they were getting ready for Purdue. They didn't have anything special in the game plan today. Or sorry, I didn't say Purdue.
Yeah,
they're getting ready for Ohio State. They didn't have anything special in the game plan today because they're getting ready for Ohio State. Illinois will probably have Adrian Lawfrey back. They'll have Kreutz back. Several of their DBs were healthy today, and I think we're going to see them even more next week. Next week will be, I think, a great game for Illinois. They're going to be more prepared. They're going to look better than certainly people expect them to look. But like Ked was saying, what happens after that? We have a bye and an opportunity after the Ohio State game and an opportunity to get ready for those kind of an underrated schedule coming down the stretch. That's not a murderer's row. There are a couple real dangerous games at the end of that schedule. There's actually 2 buys in the schedule down the stretch, which will help us to get healthy and get prepared. But what I want to underscore for Illinois fans right now is you're going to see a good game next week. Illinois is going to have some wrinkles. I feel confident that Barry Lunny will have some successful wrinkles. I don't know if there's enough wrinkles to beat him. I think down the stretch is when we're really going to see the tail. Like, I think Illinois will hang with Ohio State, but down the stretch is we're going to find out whether they've already pulled all the tricks out of their bag down the stretch, because there's only so many genius plays you can pull out of your hat before Ohio State just takes control. And we only have to think back to say that Penn State game back from 1994, We had everything going. We had a couple different sets that were working, and then all of a sudden Ohio State adjusted, and we were sunk coming down the stretch. So hopefully we have enough things ready for them to at least stay competitive through the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and I think you talked about it before the podcast. Here we are in the 7th week of the season, and technically Illinois could win the Big Ten and they could win the national championship, Steve. So that's a point that we haven't really had very many seasons where we can say that this late into it. And I do think that comes to Brett Bielema. Now we will find out a little bit about what happened after the half. I know there was a lot of bit of like texting, and obviously on X, people were like, what the heck is going on? We blew all those timeouts early in the second half. So when we have Matt Stevens on, I'm sure that question will come out then. And of course, we'll see what maybe led to that. You detected an awful lot of this, which made me wonder if Luke Altmaier they were having some issues with the microphone in his helmet. Who knows? We'll find out. We do know there was a couple plays where there were wideouts who were on the wrong side of the field and forcing timeout situation. So you do get into the small details and the small executions being extremely important to these teams. I want to give you one weird stat. When you look at single game receiving yardage, 10th place are both David Williams and a guy named Rex Smith, who did it in 1952, but they had 188 yards receiving on 11 receptions. Now, Hank Beatty came in at 186, so he was 2 yards away from putting himself in the top 10 of all time, but he did it on 5 catches. So what an electric day for Hank Beatty. And of course, there were Citrus Bowl representatives that were there watching the game today. Certainly is a nice advertisement for the Illini as the season progresses, if they can earn a spot in one of the major bowls. I thought that Colin Dixon played well. It was nice to see Bowick out there again. Clement had a good grab. They had a lot of contributions from a lot of players. On the defensive side of the ball, Illinois just struggled to get off the field. We talked a little bit about third downs, 5 for 13, but then fourth downs, 2 for 3. Ked, when we look at that defense and we look at giving up 450 yards to a 2-3 Purdue team, what are your concerns on this defense? And what do you think Ohio State is going to target when it comes next week with this defense?
They're going to throw the ball. They're going to throw it across the field. I don't think Ohio State is an explosive offense. I don't think Purdue was either, but they exploited Illinois. That is, we have to be honest here and be fair. We can talk about the entire defense, but if you were a coach and you had to scout against Illinois, throw the football. Just throw it and make them make plays. Is what I would really do. I would make them prove that they could stop me. And again, I don't want to see Ohio State become healthy against Illinois, meaning that they just rack up 400 yards of offense. I think they're a great team because the talent is there. Illinois has talent too, and I think it's going to come down to X's and O's and taking care of the football, number one. But that's my concern. Just really them being able to get off the field. I mean, there's been so many games where you just think you're off the field. And today, I don't know. I guess I can see how many sacks that they gave up. Illinois seemed to get no pressure at all toward Brown. At all. He threw 50 passes today, literally 50 passes. He should have been running for his life a lot more than what he was, and I just don't know. Maybe it's the coverages that they're using, but that's a concern for me. They have to get quarterback sack and get pressure to make it uncomfortable. So those are a few things that I'm concerned about looking to next week. Like,
Steve, what were you seeing from your angle at that defense?
So this is going to sound waffly. I actually think our defensive backs played well. I think Barry Odom does a really good job scheming his guys open. And I don't think we necessarily need to change anything on the back end. Again, with guys getting healthy, with using that caveat. I think with guys getting healthy. Jaheim Clark, by the way.
Yeah, had a nice game.
Just a massive improvement over what we've seen in the past. That guy looks like an NFL early round pick all of a sudden. I really liked him before, but there's been a huge improvement from him. Okay. So having said all that, Think about how bad today would have been if Ryan Brown was a more talented passer, because he has no touch. No touch.
Oh, absolutely none.
Yeah, no touch. Think about how bad today would have been if he was a more talented passer and if Purdue had guys
Who could
who could
catch?
handle those passes.
I was going to say that. That was my next comment. They dropped a lot of passes,
Well,
and that was
right. And some of them they didn't really try that hard for. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you know what? Look, it's above my hands. Sorry.
I mean, they have guys catching. They had guys trying to catch the ball off the shoulder pads. You learn that in fifth grade football.
Yeah.
That was Steve. Sorry to cut you off, but that was my concern. They dropped a lot of passes that could have kept those chains moving.
So we
I don't
interrupted you,
think
Steve.
we need. Yeah, I was going to say both of you guys just jumped on the point I made as if you guys were making it too. What's that about?
If you say it loud enough, it becomes your idea, Steve.
Anyway, so it's like I said, it's going to sound waffly. I don't think our defensive backs need to be better. I really like the guys we have back there. Sabur Kareem should have been back there all along, in my opinion. Anyway, having said all that, we obviously have to do something different. We have more athletic linebackers on the field than we've had in the past. They're doing an okay job. I don't think Malachi Hood and JoJo Hayden are as good pass defenders as they should be, given how athletic they are. Kanena Odeluga actually looks better than them to me as far as a pass defense, but I think it's a scheming thing. We're going to have to figure out how to cover those gaps a little bit better, because Ohio State is absolutely going to carve us up on defense. And I don't think it's the personnel. I feel like our pass rushers were actually pretty good as far as causing pressure. Brown's pretty good at scrambling out of there. He's not actually that fleet. He's tough to tackle, which is, we're not going to see that. Ohio State has a different kind of quarterback than that. He's more of an athlete, but he's not going to take on guys, and you're going to be able to bring him down a little bit more easily. Having said all that, we got to get coached a little bit better. Hopefully Aaron Henry has his thinking cap on and maybe perhaps already has some plans. Like I was saying, I feel like they probably have a plan in place already for Ohio State that they've already probably spent a day or two in practice working on. So hopefully we're ready for this. If we're not, boy, it could be ugly. It could be ugly on defense, because they're going to.
I just saw a comment from Brett Bielema, which I guess I should read it to be. I don't want to say anything wrong, but his concern was that touchdown in the half. He didn't like that, and I guess basically he's going to continue to help Aaron Henry, because that play was. You could see the frustration on Brett's face, and there's probably a lot of remotes thrown around the country on that play. But I don't know, to be honest with you. When I saw it again, they showed the start of the second half. I think it was just a misassignment and just a poor tackling, and he took a bad angle. I really do. I don't think Aaron was on Aaron, but when I looked at it again, that's what I saw.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think
I'm sorry. It is tough to be a safety sometimes, isn't it? You got to come downhill. You want to make a play. You have an opportunity probably to hit a guy when he's not necessarily ready for you. But at the same time, you're off by this much, it's a touchdown. It is tough to be a safety sometimes, to do run fits like that. But I'm sorry, Mike.
No, I think the key here is we're starting to see people get frustrated, and with Aaron Henry. And for my dollars, I guess it's really hard if you're not in the huddle to know where the breakdown occurs. Is it a bad defense? Is it the wrong play for the wrong call for the right play? Or are we looking at a situation where we have players who just can't get the job done? And I tend to go towards, when you have a really good coordinator, he understands the limitations of his players and then calls defenses that puts them into the position where they can succeed. And that's what I guess I'm looking for out of Aaron Henry. And I see that more often out of Barry Lunney than I do out of Aaron Henry. Now, I don't know if I'm being fair on that, because, again, I'm not sitting in the huddle, so I don't know exactly what the calls are. But I tend to go a little bit with what Steve is saying. I actually think these defensive backs are pretty good. I do think the issue in some of the coverage is your linebackers aren't great at it. And I also think the pass rush has to get there a little quicker. Again, not that they're doing a poor job, but if you can shave a half second off that pass rush, now your defensive backs and your linebackers both look better. So I haven't quite figured out yet if I think it's an Aaron Henry issue, if I think it's the talent issue. But obviously we don't have a Johnny Newton out there causing havoc. And you also, when you're looking at it, you really do have some good defensive backs. And I thought Clark was, as you said, was much better than what he had been, and he really stood out on a few plays. But again, I don't know what your guys' thought are. Is this a Ked issue or Ked? Is this a sitting here looking at Ked going, "This is a Ked issue"? I think it's Ked's fault. The line ID. If we get better, if Ked would do a better job, the line I defense would do better. No, is it an Aaron Henry thing? I'm not sure.
I don't think it's a talent issue. I think our talent is upgraded. I don't know if it's necessarily Aaron Henry either. That doesn't make a lot of sense. I just know if it's 3rd and 16, they're typically probably 80% they're going to throw the football. The other 10% they might run the quarterback. So why they can't get interceptions? I think last week Wozniak got one interception from the USC quarterback. They need interceptions, especially when you know they're going to pass. That will strike the fear of them throwing the ball. It gives your lineman a chance to get to the quarterback. They just don't have a lot of interceptions, and especially in passing downs. And I mean, you go back to USC, they converted I don't know how many 3rd and 10s and 15s and 20 yards. That's the issue. The bigger issue is that to me is not talent, because we've seen them excel in certain games. It's just, to me, I think they need turnovers in key situations. And if they didn't get the fumbles today, this would have been a lot closer. And you don't want to base your defense and think, okay, we're going to get turnovers every game. That's how we're going to stop people, because that's not a recipe for success. I think everybody who plays Illinois, it doesn't matter. Go back to Western, Duke, USC, they are passing the ball against them. And you're right. I'm all for the defensive backs, but you're not getting very many interceptions and turnovers back there. That's my concern.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Only you Illini guys listeners are going to hear this, but I really think we're going to see some blitzes next week that you haven't seen yet. I've mentioned this numerous times. We were very vanilla today. We rushed 4 all day long, and it wasn't terrible. We got pretty good pressure. We couldn't bring down Ryan Brown. He's tough to bring down. He did a nice job scrambling out, although he scrambles to his right every single time. And I was frustrated we didn't have anybody uncontained to his right every single time. But either way, I really think we're going to see some more athletic guys coming up the middle next week. Malachi Hood is a really good blitzer. We saw it at different times last year. Hasn't been doing it this year. I think that's something that they're holding in reserve. I'm sure Ohio State's coaches are not watching this right now. But if they are, then yeah, I know. If they are, then maybe we'll still be able to succeed anyway, or maybe I'm just wrong. But that's going to have to be my closing thought for the day. So I'll see you guys next week.
Take care, Steve.
Bye.
So one of the things that we also wanted to talk a little bit about is Delete Me. Delete Me makes it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everybody vulnerable. People say, what do data brokers do? Your name, of course, can be found, your contact information, social security number, home address, but even information about your family members could be compiled by data brokers, and then they go out and sell it online. Have you ever been a victim of identity theft, harassment, or doxing? If you haven't, you probably know someone who has. Delete Me can help. Take control of your data. Keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me now at a special discount for IlliniGuys listeners. Get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to join deleteme.com/HIT. Then you simply use the promo code HIT at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to join deleteme.com/HIT and enter code HIT at checkout. That's join deleteme.com/HIT, code HIT. So thank you there for the folks at Delete Me. Please go ahead and use those. And of course, if you get into a problem, just HIT. It seems to be the code that is going to make everything work out all right. So, Ked, when we're taking a look, I guess, at next week's game, offensively, I'm a little concerned about the center of the Illini line, but I thought TJ McMillan played pretty good today, had 2 rough plays that we could see as fans. But for the most part, I thought he played well. What do you expect Ohio State's going to look at in the Illinois offense? Because I think that probably is going to be a scarier proposition. Despite the talent that they have on that defense, I think they've got to look at Illinois and say, look, they've moved the ball against everybody.
I think Cruz is going to be back. I saw some comments about Brett Bielema talking about how he got rolled on last week and just wasn't comfortable bringing him back. I think they felt confident in getting the win today, so they sent him out. Illinois' offense, to me, there's only one really game where it was really frustrating for me more than one quarter, and that was the Duke game. I think before Steve got off the air, I think he's right. I think you're going to see more wrinkles in the offense because here's a play. See, this is how good coaching is. There was a play today where Luke Altmaier faked the pass and he went to the right side of the field and tried to score on a touchdown. Last week that worked. So Purdue schemed against that. So they're going to have to draw up something different, and they just are. Right now, I hope there's no major injuries. Bill got hurt and he came back, thank goodness. I think that's great because I think they're going to need him. But I do think you're going to see some different wrinkles on offense. But they have to play 4 quarters, Mike. You can't come out there and then you win the coin toss and you let Ohio State take the ball first and then you get it and do nothing with it. And then the second half, you don't do anything with it. I'm not saying they're going to put up 40, 50 points, but they have to compete offensively and not get far behind. Because the one thing I will say about Ohio State, and I'm saying I'm not that impressed with them, even though I think they're great, I just think their defense is ahead of their offense. Because I go back to the Texas game beginning of the year when I was at home. That's a really good offense, and I think Ohio State is great at that. So Lunny has his work cut out for him. I think that's probably more concern for me next week than the defense. I think it's going to be a shootout if they can protect Luke and they can run the ball. You're not going to throw the ball 30, 40 times against Ohio State and win games. You're going to have to run the ball to be successful next week.
Yeah, your challenge is also going to be Ohio State has some extremely athletic individuals, and it's going to be hard to run that, or to even the short passing game. Those passes will be contested against Ohio State. Other teams may be afraid to bring up a quarterback right on top of the wide receiver because they don't want to get beat deep. But Ohio State is willing, with the athleticism they have, they're willing to bet that their guy can cover your guy. And then the other thing is they got Caleb Downs and guys over the top that are just unbelievable athletes as well. So that's going to make it something I think that will be interesting to see how consistently Illinois can move the ball. If Illinois can move the ball consistently, spread it out, I think they'll be in a good place. I am concerned, though, that if they can't run it up the middle at all, then Ohio State, if they take that away from Illinois, now they can do different things to make a lot more pressure on the outside against them. And I will say, as you looking at today's game, and I realize it's early, but Vanderbilt's already up over Alabama. Florida is doing a number early on Texas. So as an Illini fan looking at 5-1, you can say, okay, the one defeat was rough, but this is no longer your dad's Illini where you worried about getting beat by teams that shouldn't beat them. It doesn't happen quite as much. So that's, and Brad had talked on here about a 16-point win, and we have to remember how far the team has come. And I think that's a valid thing. At 5-1, one thing I think is amazing about the Indiana fans is they've been good for a year and a half, and already they're worried about not getting respect as if they were like Alabama for the last 50 years. Illinois fans are not that way. We're a little bit more maybe grounded in terms of the Illinois had some ups and then had some downs, and that keeps you grounded as a fan. So as I look at this and I think about what's going on, I think Illinois needs to get healthy in the defensive backfield. And the biggest concern I have is just making sure guys are healthy and then how well the guard team, that part of the offensive line, plays against Ohio State. I think if Illinois can get some better performance out of those guys, I think they've got a chance to pull the upset next week. And I predicted Illinois to be 9-3 at the end of the year, with one of those victories being over Ohio State.
And Mike, I agree with you. I want to go back to something that you mentioned earlier. You and I talk a lot about the recruiting part of it and the speed that Illinois needs. And here's the thing for me. People always ask me, Kid, what's the difference between a 3-star recruit and a 4-star recruit? The difference is speed. Typically, because it's not physical, it's not one smarter than the other. The difference between even a 4 and 5-star, you look at that, I don't care if it's a lineman, linebacker, receiver, it is strictly on is twitch speed and just the ability to get by people. And I think Illinois trying to throw the ball over the field. I think Ohio State will recover a lot quicker. And I will say this. I wanted to say this earlier. I don't know if a lot of fans remember a kid who played at Iowa named Tim Dwight. He was an outstanding receiver. That's who Hank Beatty reminds me of. I mean, and he had a chance to play in the NFL. So Hank's the guy that's fast. And I'll tell you another guy with speed. They don't throw it to him deep, not all the time. I know they did last week. Is Colin Dixon. I think Dixon's fast too. I think he's an underrated guy that they can use. And I think next week you will see a lot of different guys getting the ball next week who typically don't. One weapon I'll use the tight end. There's just you can't leave anything on the table when you play next week, and then when the game's over, you think, man, I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have thought differently and ran the ball more. If I would have thrown the ball more. Bowick is a guy that we know is a really good receiver. Didn't get a lot of throwing his way today. So maybe that'll make a difference as well. I also want to comment on the Brad Pease comment that you had on the screen there, Mike, about the 16-point win. He's 100% right. The program, I mentioned that start of the broadcast, the program has come a long way. And I know in years past, Illinois would have lost this game. They would have found a way to lose it because, one, they wouldn't have answered the bell. They wouldn't have scored. This is a different team. And I know Illinois fans are used to losing. And you're right, you're not on Ohio State's level yet, meaning the long tradition. I think you can beat anybody. I think they can play with anybody in the country. Could they beat everybody? I don't know, because we saw what Indiana did to Illinois. So I'm not going to say make myself look stupid and say that they can go out there and score 40 points on teams and they can stop everybody, because Indiana just rolled in them. And I know Indiana's not the best team in college football, but I do think Illinois is better than what people are accustomed to.
Yeah, and I also think maybe that Indiana loss will play in Illinois' favor, as this is an Ohio State team that may look at them and say, hey, Indiana was good, but they weren't great last year, and they Illinois lost by 53. There is a chance maybe Ohio State comes in a little bit nonchalant as compared to maybe versus what they would come in if they had to play a Penn State or something like that. So there is that possibility, and Illini fans can hope for that. That would be pretty cool if it was. I will take anything that we can take as an advantage for the Illini football team to win. The other thing I think that you talked about, but I do think the Brett Bielema is huge in what you can control. And if you look at it, he talks about not fumbling the ball, not having penalties, not throwing interceptions. And if you look at this game today, Illinois kept their penalties down to 4 penalties for 31 yards. One of them was a big third down, took some yards back. But beyond that, they really didn't make the mistakes. And those are things that they can control. I certainly think probably the first stat I would look at next week is turnovers, playing a big, fast, and aggressive Ohio State team. And if Illinois comes out of that game with no turnovers, I think they're going to put themselves into a position to be competitive. And you're going to have some breaks go your way. But certainly I don't have any compunction. I thought that this week with Purdue, I thought Illinois was fortunate that the quarterback couldn't throw the ball particularly well, and the receivers didn't seem to be very motivated to go out and grab things. And then from a recruiting standpoint, Illinois is looking at a couple 4-star quarterbacks coming in, which tells me that you're moving up and getting what you need to keep the talent coming in. And the final thought is different. So you talked about speed, and I always thought it had 2 components, because I always thought your 4-stars were your guys who were either really fast or really quick. And then your 5-stars were the guys who were fast and quick. They can go side to side and they can go straight line. And to me, I always thought that was a difference, or just the sheer physical size of the individual helped in that 5-star. But what we're seeing is Illinois is in the running for a lot of very talented players. And all of a sudden now Illinois, instead of being predominantly a bunch of 3-stars with a smattering of 4s, we're starting to see more of the 4-stars and even some 5-stars looking at Illinois and saying, hey, they're in the running. And you've got to get some street cred to do that. So games like this week where you go out and beat a team that you're supposed to beat, that's been the problem with Illinois football throughout its history. is Illinois might beat a good team, but then lose to the dangest teams when you're like, oh my gosh. So Brett Bielema has taken care of that. From a recruiting standpoint, Ked, how do you feel when you're down there? You obviously meet literally every recruit before games with these kids. You follow these kids. How are you feeling about the overall quality of who is looking to come to Illinois?
I judge it. Obviously, I'll look at the player, I'll look at the film that I have available to me. But this is how I know I judge a recruit how good they are, is who else is recruiting them, not who else has just offered them. Because kids will tell me, I got offered by Clemson, LSU, Ohio State, Michigan, but they haven't talked to them in 3 months. That's just a courtesy offer because everyone else did. Last weekend, Illinois did not have a lot of recruits on campus. They had a few. It's one of the smaller numbers, and there was a reason for that. Because next week, I think Moses and Jesus and Sister Mary is coming next week. Everybody's coming next week. That and the teams and the recruits, the big dogs, the guys that have legitimate offers. When I'm talking to kids there now, that they believe when I could ask a question, what do you think of the program? And instantly, whether you're in state or out of state, the recruits, they have no problem telling me how good of a job Brett Bielema is. And then when you're on the field with these kids, they'll point to the stands and the environment. They've done a really good job of that. I think next weekend is shaping up to be big because a lot of the recruits, they are really quick to tell you about the environment, who they like, what they like about the coaches, the fan base, you name it, all of it. I'll give you an example. There's a kid named Jack Brown who's out of Missouri, and I had a chance to talk to him last week, and I don't know if people are familiar with his uncle, I believe his uncle, his cousin, Kent Brown, who's the SID at the University of Illinois. This kid is a 27, and I wrote an article about him this week on IlliniGuys.com. Look at this kid's offers. This kid is a stud, and I'm going to tell you, I can never predict the future. But if I had to pick today, and I bet my house on today, I think that kid will pick Illinois. And that kid is the number one player in the state of Missouri. So the stars are starting to line in Illinois' favor. They built long-standing relationships. They built relationships in the state of Illinois. It's okay now. It's an attractive, like Brad Underwood says with the basketball program, it's a sexy place to play. You started this podcast earlier. Illinois is attractive right now. They're very good. They have a lot of talent. And when you win games and you're on national TV, you have an opportunity to be on national TV. And when everybody's looking at you next week, they're going to be on Big Noon Kickoff again. That's the second time. Mike, I'm 95 years old. I don't know the last time I've seen stuff like that in Illinois football.
1983 would be the last time it was like that, when they played three top 8 teams with Iowa, Michigan, and Ohio State. You got to go back a long time before it was like this. So, Matt, we've got Matt Stevens, of course, is our staff writer who covers these games up close and personal. One of the questions that we got both online and on Twitter is, what the heck happened that caused all those timeouts early in the second half? Did anybody bring that up, or did you get any inkling of what it was, or are we all conjecturing that there was something going on with the helmet and the signals coming in? What?
I don't think the quarterback, the offensive coordinator, and the head coach were all in sync. I think the headsets worked just fine.
Okay.
I think they called a timeout.
Didn't like what was on the headset.
They didn't like what the quarterback was doing.
Okay.
And they called the timeout so that he would stop doing what he was doing.
Okay. What was he doing? Was he going to audibles, or?
The play came in from the sidelines, and then Luke didn't want to run the play. No, you run the play that we call because it's working. And then he audibled and motioned his tight end to the right and got jacked, like on the left side, because there was nobody to block that. Luke had an unbelievable game. He was 19 of 22 for 390 and a touchdown. He had an unbelievable game. A lot of there's going to be a lot of national helmet stickers for Luke Altmaier. I am definitely going to be one of them. But the timeouts were the quarterback, the head coach, the new center, and the offensive coordinator and the head coach were not all on the same page. And Brett Bielema decided to call a timeout and say, "Hey, look, like I am." He had to be the guy telling. Like, Luke was Tom Hanks on this one, because Brett had to walk over and go, "I am the captain now. You don't get to do this. You've had a great game. You don't get to do it." And timeouts before that was that Brett Bielema and Barry Lunney were adamant the play clock didn't function the way it was supposed to, and we need to have that one back. And that's why you saw the delay and Illinois get the timeout back, which was you didn't reset it to 40, you reset it to 25. That's BS. We want our timeout back. That's why they called the timeout to avoid a delay of game, which Bielema and Lunny were adamant, which is a real reason why it's great to have Bielema on the side, have Lunny on the sidelines, because he finally came down and said, hey, look, I called that play with plenty of time left. And so the refs got together. I think the replay officials in Chicago got together and were like, no, this shouldn't have worked out time-wise, because they kept trying to put the game clock back together, and they didn't realize that play clock should have been at 40, and that's why Illinois got the one timeout back. Okay. There was a lot of confusion going on that didn't have a whole lot to do with the head coach losing his mind.
Yeah. We also, the other thing that we noticed was Brown wasn't the most accurate passer in the world. And boy, his receivers either have bad hands or have an inability to really put a hard effort in to catch the ball. Was that evident there as it was on TV? Because there were a couple times I thought you just reach your hand up like this, and they could have snared a pass or two.
Do you want to know how many receivers are left on Purdue's roster that Jeff Braun recruited? Big donut. Okay. That's why. And I think Ryan Brown's a really good athlete, and I think that he's probably the best option that Purdue has. It's just but Purdue has to play they can't play from behind, because Ryan Brown throwing the ball vertically down the field is not going to work. And I actually thought early on Illinois' defense did a really good job of kind of Darren Mensing him, what they did with Darian Mensah, which is, we're not going to let you go north and south, pal. If you want to go east and west and try to figure that out, have at it. But they were not going to let Ryan Brown take the snap, scramble, and then eventually go north and south. That was not going to happen. And they figured if they did that, they would have at least a decent day in terms of points. And for the most part, when they didn't have a complete secondary breakdown at the end of the half, they were doing a pretty acceptable job against an offense that is designed to keep everything on pace and moving and all those kinds of things. I think Illinois did a whole bunch of things to try to slow Purdue and Ryan Brown down. And I think a lot of it, if Ryan Brown had gotten to get vertical, with his legs, I think it would have opened up what they wanted to do throwing the football. Illinois just never let him get to that.
Okay. And Matt, let me ask you, because we talked about it before you got on the air, Caden Fagan only had 10 carries. Is it because he's not blocking well? Is it because he's taking too long to get to read the holes? I mean, Khalil Valentine's obviously a different running back, but we had a lot of our listeners out there concerned about why he only got 10 carries today.
Because Luke Altmaier threw for 390 yards and Khalil Valentine had more yards, and they just didn't. And then Caden Fagan's running the football in the second half when Purdue absolutely knows that Illinois has to bleed clock and run the football. Those are the answers. If you're worried about Caden Fagan only getting 10 carries, you're worried about the wrong things.
How about the play of TJ McMillan in there?
I thought it was unbelievable. I thought
he had two rough plays, and that was about it, really. I thought he played pretty well.
The false start on everybody except for the center is his fault, because he double clutched the snap. They might as well have just called him for a false start.
Everybody moved except for him. I've never seen that.
I have, because that's an absolute dead giveaway that he double clutched the snap, because everybody moved and the ball didn't move.
Yeah.
But I thought he did a hell of a job. I thought the 25-yard run for Khalil Valentine all the way up the gap, which is a gap run play up the A gap that I know Kedric Prince loves all the time. It went for 25 yards and he didn't get touched. And he didn't get touched because Brandon Henderson absolutely pancaked his guy and TJ McMillan turned his guy without holding. And he didn't get touched. And Purdue Looney tuned it and for the second time had two defensive secondary people run into each other.
That was fun.
But I think we're going to run a gap with Khalil Valentine and Caden Fagan. We're going to keep doing that, folks. And if you're worried about that, you're worried about the wrong things. You look, Brett Bielema's the head coach. Barry Lonnie's the offensive coordinator. We're going to run the football. And I thought Illinois did a really good job of figuring out a way to get Khalil Valentine on some of those carries that TJ doesn't necessarily have to blow his guy up. And I think TJ's done a really good job. He's a son of a head coach. Bob McMillan played Arena League football in Chicago. He's the head coach at Wheaton St. Francis right now. He's the son of a head coach. He's mimicked Josh Kreutz for 3 years now. And so this idea that I think Illinois, and I'm not saying they won't do it, but this idea that Illinois has to go in the portal after this season and get a center, TJ McMillan's going to have something to say about that the same way that Josh Kreutz has had something to say about that for 3 years. To do what he did Now I got Bielema to admit that this wasn't like a TJ's just going to play today. Cruz got rolled up in the USC game, and he has not practiced. He tried to go in the walkthrough on Friday, but TJ McMillan took all the first team reps at center. And you could tell that was the case because there was a crispness to what they were doing, especially in pass protection. And I felt like that young man in his first career start on the road in the Big Ten did a really good job. I thought it was really key.
Yeah, I thought he played well. You look at Hank Beatty, interesting thing here, Matt. He was 2 yards away from making top 10 of all time. He would have tied David Williams there. But unlike most of those players, I think the least 5'10", amount of catches. 130,
yeah.
He only had 5 catches.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, are you about to go the Hank Beatty's 5'10", 180 pounds? No,
I was going to go with just 5 catches. If he would have got a 6th catch, likely would have had a top 10 day, and he still would be the least amount of catches on the top 10. I got to be honest with you. We've been higher on Hank as a group, the Illini guys, because Brad Sturdy got a chance to watch the kid grow up and knows what he can do. But I got to be honest with you. I've been a huge fan of his, but this was one of those days where he literally, every time he touched the ball, had a chance to change the game around.
2 big plays for me. One is obviously the touchdown. Again, this was the first Looney Tunes where he actually said he did the thing that you're not supposed to do, which is look behind him because he needed to know why he was that wide open. Son, you were that wide open because 2 Purdue defensive backs basically had a head-on collision in the middle of the field.
It's more fun when the other team does it than when
the 2 deep safeties had a head-on collision in the middle of the field. He could have thrown that ball to Hank Beatty. He could have thrown that ball to Hudson Clement, it was going to go for a touchdown.
Yeah.
And the other one that was the one down the sideline that ended at the 1, and then Caden ran it in the extra. But that one is thrown right in Hank Beatty's breadbasket. That's the best throw I've ever seen Luke Altmaier make. Yep. That is an NFL throw. And so he has become a big play option, not scheming it the same, but in a very, I would say, mental state for Luke, the same way that Pat Bryant was last year. He's that guy. I asked Hank this today, right on the field after this game. You guys remember, Mike, I know you remember, Luke sat there in Vegas during Big Ten Media Day and said, hey, look, I need an alpha out of this wide receiver group because I don't know who it is yet. And I need to know. I need one to step up. And I asked Hank, I said, what did you think when he said that? Because Hank wasn't in Vegas. And I said, and Hank kind of looked at him and he goes, he's talking about me. My first reaction was he's talking about me. And I need to be that guy. I'm a 4th-year guy. I need to be that guy. And I got him pulled aside and I said, did it piss you off? Because he's literally calling out his wide receivers. If you want to frame it that way, he said, it didn't piss us off. It made us laugh because we knew we had a good group. We had a really good group. And look, Hank had an unbelievable day. Luke Altmaier had probably the best day of any quarterback in the country today. I think people need to start talking about him a little bit more. Unfortunately, there's some really good quarterbacks in this 18-team conference, but Luke Altmaier needs to get a little bit more recognition, in my opinion. But Hank Beatty had a really good day, but I also thought Luke had a lot of friends he could throw the football to today. If he wanted to hit Colin Dixon on some things that happened, if he wanted to hit Hudson Clement on some things that happened, I think that if he had thrown one of his 3 incompletions, could have gone for a touchdown because Justin Bowick had the proper rebound box out message on the jump ball in the end zone. Luke just airmailed it a little bit. So he did his job today. And then on a key 3rd down, he's jiving away from 2 defenders and finds Alexander Kapka-Jones wide open in the middle of the field for a first down. His only catch of the game. The play out of halftime where Ashton Hollins I thought it was going to go for a touchdown because, again, there was some confusion in the secondary for Purdue, and Ashton Hollins, who's 6'5" and can run like a deer, absolutely took advantage of that, and so did Luke Altmaier. And so did Barry Lunny for drawing that up right out of half. Luke's got a lot of friends he can throw the football to. I feel like throwing the football is not right now Illinois' problem. Illinois' problem is just trying to get 7 points instead of 3 today. But that leads us to Brett Bielema's overall summation, Mike, which was, I think we didn't play our best football, and we just won a Big Ten road game by 16 points.
That's how we started off the podcast.
That's how Brett Bielema started off his post game, which is our program's now out of place.
Brett and I are kindred spirits.
I don't think Illinois is out of place. I think Brett Bielema believes now this doesn't work against Ohio State. This isn't going to work probably even though they lost again today. This probably doesn't work when they go to Madison. But Brett Bielema is feels like his program's at a place where they don't have to play their best in order to go on the road and win a football game. And
are we at a point, Matt, where they've become the 80s 49ers, where the Illini are actually throwing the ball to set up the run? Because I'm telling you, when they pick up the pace a little bit, spread the things out, all of a sudden their running game works better.
Yeah, I think yes and no.
I don't see
the answer to that is yes. There's a lot of logic.
Goal.
There's a lot of logic in what you're saying, Mike Cagley. There really is. Here's where I see it, is that they think a first quarter run that gets 3 yards and physically pounds the defense is what they want by the time they get to the fourth quarter. You're seeing defenses wear down because of how they're running the football in the first quarter and early in the second quarter. You saw it against USC. You saw it against Duke. I feel like Illinois, I think they used the pass to set up the run late, but I also think they used their physical run to set up being able to have a drive like they did last week against Southern Cal, where they don't get any yards throwing the football. Right. And they're able to march the ball down the field, running the football for the game-winning field goal. The reason they're able to have success in the fourth quarter running the football is because of what they're doing early in games, even if it's not going for big chunk yardage. And that's where I think the boxing analogy works, which is you don't really understand how those inside jabs are really working until you get to about the 8th, 9th, or 10th round. You don't really know how those inside runs are working until you get to the third and fourth quarter for Illinois. And I think you're seeing that. And I think Illinois feels like Big Ten, to quote Brett Bielema before the USC game with Jenny Tapp, Big Ten physicality has to win out. And I think they need to do a better job of trying to get Caden Fagan some open lanes early. But I think what he's doing physically is setting up for what Khalil Valentine can do later on in games, because defenses just wear down.
Yeah, we talked about Caden, and it seems like when he gets the ball at full speed, he does so much better. And
they've done a really cool thing where, I don't know if Steve or anybody else picked this up too, but they've stopped the whole keeping him in to block and just allowed him to be a safety valve for Luke. And that's worked out a lot better than having him be in the backfield and pick up a blitzer.
Yeah, that's not one of his strengths either. So,
well, it was.
But that's good though.
It certainly wasn't in Bloomington. But Barry Lunny's just figured out, okay, why don't I just dip him out for a little wheel route here? And
exactly.
you saw Luke hit him a couple of times where the ball hits my hands. Now I get it out to Caden because I'm dead.
Well,
I'm dead.
Think of a DB. That's the last thing you want to get in the open field is.
But that's the point.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot to be used with number 3. And I think that they figured it out and scored 43 points doing it. And that included 4 or 5 field goals by David Alano today. You turn some of those into touchdowns, which I know that Brett's going to try to figure out a way to do next week. You really got something here. But I think Brett Bielema is onto something where I think this program has turned a corner where if it's not a really good football program, and look, year one of Barry Odom, when they bring in 70 plus new players, it's not going to be a great thing in West Lafayette yet. Illinois feels like that they didn't play their best at Duke and they won that game by how much, right? They didn't play their best game today and they won by 16. That's not going to work at Indiana. We saw that. It's not going to work next week against Ohio State. And there are some road games where that's just not going to work. But Illinois is at a place now where they don't have to worry about mistakes that are being made because that'll crush them. Because quite frankly, this is one of those rare games where you could look, honestly, Mike, you can look at the recruiting rankings and Illinois is not out talented. Illinois didn't have to play pretty today or its best in order to win. And you saw that pretty clearly early on.
Any other comments as we're hitting the hour and 15-minute point here, Matt, that you want to put out there for folks?
Yeah, I run my column idea by Larry Smith. I'll run it by you because I think that this is crucial. And it really doesn't have anything to do with the 60 minutes of football we saw, believe it or not. What it has to do with is that, look, I know that the Big Ten's probably going to change because they do this all the time. But if they don't change their schedule, like the way that they line up their schedule, the league football schedules, Mike, I think Illinois and Brett Bielema drew the best poker hand they possibly could because I don't see a lot of hope here in West Lafayette for a long time. And I don't see a lot of hope in Evanston. And if those are your 2 permanents in your Illinois, guess what? Like you just drew pocket aces because I think you feel like, okay, at that point, if we don't schedule stupid, like in our non-con, We got 4 guaranteed wins already on our schedule. You can't write the Big Ten. You can't write Purdue and Northwestern in pen, but you can write it in pencil. And you can be an almost double-digit favorite on the road at Purdue. They're going to get better under Barry Odom, but I don't think Illinois' program is going to regress under Brett Bielema significantly. So they're so far ahead of where Purdue is right now. They're so far ahead of where Northwestern is right now. I think Illinois, Mike, our fans love to complain about how the people in Rosemont tend to screw over the Illini on occasion. I think the people in Rosemont just dealt Brett Bielema pocket aces, because if you're playing Northwestern and you're playing Purdue every year, I don't see a better hand. And I think it's been like Brett Bielema said today, it's been a long time since Illinois doesn't have to play its best to win a Big Ten road game. It's been a long time since Illinois can feel like, oh, we're not losing to them. And I think they came in today feeling, no, we're not going to lose to them. And I think they're going to feel that at the end of the year, too, when they play Northwestern, and they're like, we're not going to lose to them. And there's some major rebuilding going on there, too. I just felt that it didn't really even hit me until the second quarter. And I'm like, boy, Barry Odom's got a long road of rebuild here. He really does.
Look, people got mad at Brett Bielema for telling Ryan that may not be the best job to take. And certainly it's hard to tell somebody not to take a job that's going to pay you millions of dollars. But when you look at the Purdue, just the logistics of it and the NIL component of it, et cetera, that's a tough one to hold. That's a tough road to hoe. And then you look at other programs. Again, Illinois fans, I read one of our members was online and on Twitter, and he said, this is the maddest I've ever been at a 16-point road win. And I look at that and I'm like, that's probably says more than you think about what Brett Bielema's done for this program, because Illinois fans have never, ever been able to be upset about a 16-point road win. And then you look at, again, I'm not saying it's going to end up this way, but right now Penn State's down 24-7 to UCLA.
Yeah, it's the verbal, Mike, it's the verbal epitome of you're not seeing the forest through all the trees, right?
And
like you can be mad at Aaron. You
yeah.
can be really mad at Aaron Henry because people sometimes don't want to let that go. Over the last 3 years, people didn't want to let it go. They didn't want him hired in the first place. They wanted him fired after year one because he wasn't qualified to do the job. It was his first year. We shouldn't have done that. Brett Bielema doesn't give a damn what your opinion is. People are mad. And in year 3, people are mad. Look, the end of half stuff's got to stop. And I think that's where Brett is the most frustrated with Aaron, is that, hey, look, the end of this half stuff's got to stop.
Yeah.
I don't think he's really all that worried about the yards. If the yards end up in a turnover or a turnover on downs or a field goal, I don't think Brett Bielema cares. It's the end of half stuff. It's that 62-yard touchdown where nobody is communicating on what should have happened there. That should not have happened. That Brett Bielema mentioned that 5 times at the post game, that he was really mad about that. I think the end of half stuff's got to change. Other than that, like, Brett Bielema's adopted son, Aaron Henry, is not going anywhere, folks. Like, I'm sorry, he's just not. But anyway, you're missing the forest within the trees, folks. This is a 16-point win. Brett Bielema came in his first year, and he lost 13-9, and he had a 9-6 lead his first year. Barry Odom comes in his first year, and it's not, honestly, here's the thing. I think they're going to go 4-8. Like, I really do. And Walt went 4-8, and I was more encouraged about Walt's 4-8 because Barry flipped this roster so badly with 70-plus new players. And I know what Barry Odom's defense is supposed to look like. I've seen it at Missouri when they play hard and they beat some teams in the SEC they're not supposed to beat, and they're out-athleting teams in the SEC. They're supposed to out-athlete. He did it at Arkansas too. This is not that. And so I actually think that they're further behind in year one than Walt was in year one. And Walt just completely let it go through the ice. And in year 2, I don't think Barry's going to do that. But I think that they're going to have to flip the roster again with no financial real support in terms of NIL on top of rev share for the football program. And I just look, it's a program that Illinois would want on the schedule every year. Northwestern is a program that Illinois right now would want on the schedule every year. And guess what? The people in Evanston made sure that you do. And so if you're Brett Bielema right now, you're going, I get these 2 permanents. Oh, by the way, if you still believe in regional recruiting, I'm still recruiting against those 2 programs, like for Illinois and Indiana kids. And I am so far ahead. I don't even care if it's NIL, and they are ahead of both of those programs in NIL too. But they are so far ahead in development with what they have, what they have in year 5 under Brett Bielema. The future is bright if Illinois can continue to schedule Purdue. The people in Rosemont can continue to schedule Purdue and Northwestern, and I think you're seeing that. I think you're seeing what Brett Bielema is building, and this is a consistent postseason bowl team in Champaign, and I don't see that in here in West Lafayette, and I certainly don't see it in Evanston. And so, if you're that far ahead, good things are going to happen, because then, Mike, now we're looking at 4 games where you can probably write down in a W, right? Well, as Brett Bielema would say, you get 12 guaranteed. If 4 of those are, like, do the math, like, at that point, your season becomes a 6-game schedule, or even maybe a 4-game schedule, like the Ohio States, Penn States, Oregons, Michigans, right, and all the world have had for years.
Yes.
Illinois has never gotten to live in that world. Illinois fans, I think, will eventually get to adjust to not remembering the details of this 16-point win that frustrate them a little bit, and just go, hey, we kicked the hell out of Purdue, like, on that October afternoon. But that's going to take time, hopefully. But Illinois is so far advanced in front of these 2 programs that I think from a program build standpoint, Brett Bielema's already got a significant leg up in a way that I think is really significant. And so that's my final thought, is that I think when you look at, I don't remember a time, before, you were going to the 80s. I'd go to Ron Turner when he won the Big Ten and went to the Sugar Bowl, like in 01. Like, that was the last time I thought, gee, Illinois is that significantly in front of Purdue and Northwestern. Yep. And look, I will say it too. I think Barry Odom's a really good coach. I have no idea what Northwestern's going to do from a coaching standpoint in the future. I just don't think it's going to involve David Braun, even if it does in 2026. But I've seen Jeff Brom come in here and win 8 games in his first year, and there's a reason why. I've seen Pat Fitzgerald go into Northwestern and win the West and go to the Big Ten title game at that school, and there's a reason. I've seen Illinois win 10 games under Brett Bielema, and they're about to probably guarantee themselves an 8-9 win season here if everything goes right. At worst, under Brett Bielema, after winning 10 games, there's a reason. If you put people in place at these places, good things can happen. If you don't, you will be significantly behind schools that you cannot afford to be significantly behind. And right now, if you're an Illinois fan, you're on the good side of this. Enjoy it.
Yep. That's a perfect way to end the podcast, Matt. Thank you so much for coming on after the game. Folks, if you've enjoyed this here at IlliniGuys.com, we certainly would love to have you join us on IlliniGuys.com. You can go there, join for just a $99 a year is all it is. You get all of our stuff. You can go behind the scenes as well, and that will allow you to be in a situation where you can get onto our message boards. You can talk back and forth with Brad, Ked, Matt, Steve, Jonathan, myself, Larry, and you have that conversation. It's not just a passive one-way relationship, but you actually get to know people and you can ask what's going on. We have a very active group of people on there. So there's a lot of people who actually become friends in real life by going through the message boards and then seeing games together, etc. That's how Larry, Brad, and I got met and developed our relationships early on. So please go ahead and take a look at that. Also, if you're on the STL Sports Central YouTube page, like this and go ahead and follow that YouTube page. You can also follow the IlliniGuys.com YouTube page. You get everything that we have there that goes out on audio, video, and you can enjoy Illini news, notes, and recruiting all year round. We really appreciate having you come on board and thank you very much. Until next time, of course, go Illini.